who has to hand you straight over to Hammersmith from the studio.
And here comes the Mayor, Councillor John Hayes, to announce the results for Hammersmith North.
Ladies and gentlemen, the parliamentary election for the constituency of Hammersmith North on the 8th of October 1959. I, the undersigned, being the returning officer for the constituency above mentioned, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. Bagnall William David Armstrong, 14,662. Tomney Frank,
Labour,
21,000. 21,409. And that the undermentioned person has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency, Frank Tomney. Signed, John Hayes, returning officer. Mr. Tomney.
That gives a Labour majority of 6,747, which means that Labour's majority here at Hammersmith North has fallen by 2,116. And now I hand you back to Richard Dimbleby.
Those figures agree with ours. I'm expecting a result to come at any moment from somewhere. It's
those are the first seats. That's the first seat in which the turnout has actually dropped, Hammersmith North. There was, in fact, there a swing to the Conservatives, 1.8%. I want to go back, if I may, to Accrington, where there was a swing to the Conservatives again of just under 1%. Now, I may have stressed too much the fact that in the Salfords, which were two marginal seats, the first two relatively marginal seats we'd had, the Labour Party had a pretty big swing to them. In Accrington, another Lancashire town, more cotton town than the rest, there's been a swing to the Conservatives in a marginal seat. The two Salford results have been the two ones that have been most encouraging for Labour. It's very difficult here, trying to not to give too much optimism to one side or to the other, as the results seesaw to and fro.
Sorry, we have a result in now. London, cities of London and Westminster.
This is confirming the one that we had before.
Confirming the one we had already. Sorry to interrupt you. Where the Conservative is in again in the shape of Sir Harry Hilton Foster, the Solicitor General. There you get the figure, 17,188. The majority previously, 1,844. And there is Sir Harry, who some people say might be the next Speaker of the House of Commons, I believe.
Of course, he moved from York. He's one of the two sitting Conservative members who were Conservative members of the last Parliament who moved their constituency. I believe Brigadier Maclean moved from Lancaster up into Scotland. The turnout in Westminster was pretty low, only just over 60%, though it was slightly up on 1955.
I may mention, we were talking a moment ago, Hammersmith North, and saw the result. That, of course, is the constituency in which we all sit at this moment in the studio.
And cities of London and Westminster, it was the first case of a Liberal losing his deposit. He did get 10.4% of the vote, but he still lost his deposit. He didn't get an eighth of the total vote.
Mackenzie?
Could I point out there were 10 results in, and I don't think anybody's prepared to say who's won yet, are they? With absolute confidence, who's won this election?
Not with complete confidence, but it does seem that the Conservatives were in by a short head, I must say.
Well, this is an unusual election when after 10 results you're as cautious as that.
Yes, I'm always too willing to stick my neck out, too.
Before you start fighting, let us check the result of Burnley. Here it is. The Labour majority this time, as you see it, 6,773. It was, in the last election, 5,636, so it has gone up a matter of 1,000 and a bit.
The turnout was just about the same as last time, and there was a swing to Labour of about 1.5%.
Now, we've checked everything we can check up to date. We shall have some... I understand there's a result coming from Southampton Waterway very shortly. For the moment, however, I believe Mr. Gateskill may be in the count at Leeds, or so I understand. We said we were going to see him earlier. Let's see if we can catch him there this time. Over we go now to Key at Leeds.
He's
Yes, Mr. Gaitskell has just come in and received a rather unorthodox sort of reception of enthusiasm from such an august procedure as this. He's been just you can see him down there now talking to counters and party supporters. His wife is with him and his daughter. He's looking very happy and not at all worried by David Butler's forecast that the Conservatives are in by a short head. Later on, when we've had more results, we'll be talking to him and asking him what he thinks about the way it's going. Meantime, back to Richard Dimbleby in London.
I think we've got, yes, there's a result coming at any moment now, which I'm just waiting for 1 second, David. Yes, here it is. Hastings. Conservatives have held Hastings. Mr. Cooper Key, the majority previously was 8,536. It's gone up, as you see, by some 3,000. Hastings, the home of the Winkle Club. If I had a Winkle, I'd Winkle up.
The drop in the turnout there, quite 1.5%, and a swing to the Conservatives. We've had a swing to the Conservatives in every safe Conservative seat here. This may reflect the way in which the Labour Party, even more than the Conservatives, concentrated their organisational efforts on marginals and didn't try to fight very hard in the safe seats. Now, there are 2 points, if I may make, about the way the results have come so far. It does seem, insofar as you can make any conclusions yet, that the Liberal intervention has not hurt the Conservatives more than the Labour Party. Where they have intervened, there's still been a slightly better than average position from the Conservative point of view. Secondly, of course, I must stress, we haven't had any seats yet from genuinely rural areas. We've heard from suburban areas, from resorts, and from industrial towns. We haven't heard yet from genuinely rural areas. We shan't for some time.
Before we look at the state of the parties, may I say, when I said I'd like to Winkle up, I didn't mean because of the result of that election. Hastings, it's the customary greeting to Hastings anyway. Party totals, and here they are.
And we're still 7 seats to the Conservatives, 5 seats to Labour. No seat has yet changed hands.
The magic column to watch is on the right.
What about the party lead? Now, let's have a look at that.
Again, our 12 results are in. They divided 7-5, and therefore there's a 2-seat lead to the Conservatives, which, of course, doesn't mean anything at all yet by way of indicating what's going to happen. It's not till there's a change of ownership and occupation of a seat that something really significant is on our hands.
Watching anxiously for one that hasn't yet arrived. Butler?
Well, I think I'd like to pause and digest what we've got so far. It certainly suggests that the uniform pattern of previous results has not been reflected as much in this time as it has been in previous elections. We've been sitting here tautly at 10 to 11. The results are flowing a little faster this time. We've been sitting here tautly trying to decide what the final outcome is. I'm still much more at sea than I felt in 1955 or 1951 or 1950 at this time of day.
Did anybody warn you this might be so?
Yes, Bob, you did, I know.
All right, gentlemen. How's Ella? Is she well?
Ella is well. On 11 results, she says that the turnout was 77.4%, and she says that there was a total swing to the Conservatives now on these results of 1% to the Conservatives. No change in the Liberal position because we haven't yet any seats where the Liberal fought last time. Everyone so far has been where the Liberals, if I may dare say it, intervened.
We will now leave London and pay a short visit to the Count at Manchester.
And here we are in the Great Hall at Manchester Town Hall, and looking now at the Cheetham division, where we're hoping for a result any moment. Cheetham was held at the last election by Labour with a majority of 8,531 by the present candidate, Norman Lever. He is a barrister.
I'm interrupting to say there's a result from Southampton. Over we go.
It will be the result of Southampton test, which we shall see. And the town clerk is already in the long marble corridor, bringing down with him the sheriff who will read the result. We've got a very good crowd here, a rather noisy crowd outside the Civic Centre. They are in the doorway now, and there will be no nonsense and no delay here, because the town clerk of Southampton is a great stickler for election discipline, and I think this will go through with this formidable combination of legal and military precision.
Ladies and gentlemen, Southampton test consistency. I, the undersigned, being the returning officer for the constituency above mentioned, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. Howard, 30,176.
Conservative.
Williams, 23,407. I declare John Howard elected.
That means there's no change in Southampton Test, and I return you now to Richard Dimbleby in London.
And I think the majority in Southampton apparently has been doubled. Manchester now.
And here we are back in Manchester again, but looking this time at the Moss Side constituency in another part of the Great Hall. We're waiting now for the announcement. Candidates here are J. Watts, Conservative, and Anne Morris, Labour.
Yes. I, being the returning officer for the Manchester Moss Side constituency, hereby declare that the total number of votes given for each candidate in the election was as follows. James Watts, 22,090. Norman Morris, 13,371. And I declare that James Watts has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency.
Those figures again. The Conservative candidate, James Watts, held 22,090, and the Labour candidate, Morris, 13,371. No change there. Moss Side, you may remember, was in the very capable hands of Dame Florence Horsburgh. Anyway, now we're going back to Richard Dimbleby in London.
With the result for Hayes and Harlington, where Labour is in, majority last time 4,152, majority this time 6,118, I beg your pardon. The majority is reduced to 4,152.
A 3.5% swing to the Conservatives. I think now I want to rat probably on the prediction that it is a neck-and-neck race. There are enough things from enough parts of the country to point clearly to a Conservative victory in this election.
I'm not prepared to go along with that yet. I think it's quite likely, but by no means certain.
Shall we take confirmation of Accrington? Yes, here's Accrington. Just to check figures. Labour majority 600, Labour majority 1955, 1,345. We have a result, Manchester Exchange, or is that confirmation?
No, it's not confirmation.
No, this is a new result. Manchester Exchange, Labour's held the Exchange division of Manchester. The majority last time was 7,281, so they're up 1,500.
And the biggest swing to Labour in any election so far, 3.5% to Labour. There does seem to be a plain difference in north and south.
A new result from Guildford. Guildford, the Conservative is in. Majority last time, 11,328, so it's up a couple of thousand. Another one on the way.
Another Conservative victory there in a safe seat, a swing to the Conservatives, 1% in Guildford.
Here is Wolverhampton Southwest. Conservative is in again at Wolverhampton Southwest. The previous majority was 8,420. This time it has gone up by nearly 3,000.
A 4% swing to the Conservatives. Another new area of the country we hadn't heard from before, and the Conservatives doing much better there.
We will now go briefly to visit Derek Hart at Labour headquarters at Transport House.
Back at Transport House, here again is Mr. Morgan Phillips. Well, are you worried, Mr. Phillips, about this swing that seems to be taking place? In Southampton, the Conservative vote was the majority was nearly doubled. Does this worry you particularly?
Well, not particularly. What worries me, of course, is that the South isn't keeping pace with the North. It seems to me the swing in our favour in the North is much better than it is in the South. That does confirm, of course, the canvass returns we had earlier on. But we were hopeful that the more intense canvass in the North gave us more information than the more widely scattered canvass in the south.
Yes. Well, are you prepared to controvert what David Butler just said, that this is a clear-cut victory for the Conservatives?
Oh, I think that's very premature at this stage, because you see no seat has changed hands at all in the results up to date. And none of these that we expect in our first priority list have really come up yet.
Were you worried, disappointed rather, that the swing in the Burnley constituency wasn't greater?
Oh no, the Burnley electorate is slightly down. You see, there are changes in the electorate when you are talking about swings that have to be taken into account. But one factor that's obvious in these elections so far is that the Liberals are taking as much from us as they are from the Conservatives, and in one or two cases even more.
Do you think that you underestimated perhaps the Liberal polling capacity in this election?
No, we didn't underestimate. I don't think their role, but our swing is greater in the straight fight seats than in the others.
Mr. Phillips, thank you. I must now hand this back to the studio and Richard Dimbleby.
That's to take you straight to Manchester, where I think there's a result coming.
Was as follows. Norman Harold Lever,
Labour,
20,941. O'Gara Mary Patricia,
Conservative,
11,605. I further declare that Norman Harold Lever has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency.
Well, no change again there. Labour have held Cheetham with Norman Lever, but I think Miss O'Gara, who is only 26, has certainly put up a very good fight. She is a school teacher. There she is. Anyway, now we're going back to Richard Dimbleby in London.
I think so much has happened. I think so much has happened that we'll take party totals. Here we are.
Well, there we are with 19 results in, 11 to the Conservatives, 8 to Labour. No change of seats yet. At the moment, we're just level pegging in that sense. We've still got to watch very closely on the swings. I must say it's an immensely tense job, the statistical side now.
Let's see party lead.
Would I just point out on that, if I may, that Labour must win 38 seats in the column net change to put out the government. In this election, they must put up 38 on the right-hand column if they're going to put out the government.
Let's have a quick look at the party lead. Bob, will you take the party lead?
Well, not anything exciting yet. Con lead over Lab 3, but there's only 19 in and no change.
There's a result coming from Manchester. Just a new one, sorry.
Well, I can stress that Moss side, this is confirmation from Moss side, where there was a 2% swing to Labour. Again, in the north, there is a very different picture from the south. The Conservatives, again, Labour Party is doing steadily better in Lancashire and not so well in the south.
While we're at it, here's the confirmation of Chatham. Labour majority, 9336. It was previously 8,531.
A swing to Labour of 2.2%.
Southampton test.
This is confirmation.
Confirmation.
Labour there loses one of its very colourful young women candidates, the daughter of Vera Brittain, the novelist, and Professor Catlin, the political scientist.
And the Conservative majority not quite double, but certainly very largely...
2.5% swing to the Conservatives. And a slightly higher turnout, 1% up on turnout. I think there's something quite exciting in the hopper at the moment, but we'll wait for that.
Yes, I may say that Butler gets in secret information from Mrs. Ella down the end, and we try to see what it is. He keeps his hand over it until he's ready. Here's a result. Yes. London. Geoffrey Johnson-Smith is in for London, Holborn and St Pancras South. The previous Labour majority there was 931, so the Conservatives have taken this seat from Labour. Here is Mr. Johnson-Smith, whose face will be extremely familiar to you because he works in this very studio a lot of the time. Comments, please?
This is the first seat to change hands. The Conservatives have gained this seat. One should be careful about interpreting anything from Holborn and St Pancras, where they have had a large number of local disputes, which have many of them hit the national press. But at the same time, there was there a 2.5% swing to the Conservatives on a slightly increased poll.
Remember, no Liberal stood this time, and last time the Liberal got about 1,000 votes there at Holborn and St Pancras. And I understand the population changes about 15% a year there, so it is a little difficult to take it as a yardstick, although obviously the first gain is important to the Conservatives.
Let us now have a look at the state of the parties, which has changed a little bit this time.
It's going to change quite a lot more
I'm afraid
before we're ready for talking about
That's
it.
all right. Well, we caught it on the hop. We'll get back to
That
it
was
in a
known as
minute.
the countdown.
We will have it for you in a moment. There it is, respectable.
One seat. 20 seats in, one Conservative gain.
There's a new result coming to interrupt you. Wolverhampton North East. Where there's been no change. I'm afraid I have no card available at this very moment for Wolverhampton to give you.
But this again was a cut majority. There was quite a big swing to the Conservatives in the other seat in Wolverhampton, and this one is also a swing to the Conservatives. It does seem the West Midlands are going to the Conservatives on the results we've had so far.
The Labour majority last time was over 9,000 here. Another result is here from Solihull, and here it is. The Conservatives have held Solihull. Majority last time 18,000, majority this time 23,000.
Another swing to the Conservatives in the West Midlands, 1.7% swing to the Conservatives on a slightly increased poll in Solihull.
This Mr. Lindsay, by the way, is a great explorer, a man who goes all over the world, Arctic and elsewhere.
He was, before the war, he was one of those who opposed Munich in the Conservative Party, a man of some independence and viewpoint.
Yes. We share our comments. Mine are human, yours are political.
On 20 results, the average swing to the Conservatives has been 0.7% to the Conservatives.
There's another result coming. We have two results. We will go then away for a result in sound only to Farnworth in the north.
This is Keith Macklin in Farnworth, and here Labour has held the seat with an increased majority in an 83.5% poll. The figures are Ernest Thornton Labour, 27,393. Albert Royce, Conservative, 19,356. A majority of 8,037. A total poll of 46,749. And now back to Richard Dimbleby in London.
That is an increased majority for Labour at Farnworth. Here's the result for Wembley North. The Conservative is in again at Wembley North. The majority last time was 10,109. It's as near as can be, up 1,000 now. Comments?
And the Liberal has increased his support by about 50% in that constituency.
1.5% swing to the Conservatives in Wembley North, and in fact, here we have again the pattern. In the south of England, around London, the Conservatives are plainly gaining. But so far, with the exception of Holborn and St Pancras North, which we've had, Holborn and St Pancras South, every result has been, in a relatively speaking, safe Conservative seat. We still are looking very eagerly for seeing how things are behaving in the marginals, how things are behaving in areas of England we've heard nothing from yet.
And of course, let's face it, the factor of television may have played some part in that one changeover so far. That is, a very well-known television personality obviously has increased Conservative strength by a small proportion.
I may comment that in a strictly non-political way, Wing Commander Bullis, Wembley, may have deserved his victory. He's conducted 5,000 people around the Palace of Westminster. State of the party.
Here we have the picture, 22 seats in, one Conservative gain, one Labour loss. That's Holborn and St Pancras, the one seat that's changed hands.
May I explain that we have now changed to the state of the parties coming from the Press Association instead of using our own board. What has happened is that results have been pouring in and the PA figures have now caught up ours. This means that the figures you now see for party totals may not tally with the figure that you may be keeping on your knee at home. Don't be alarmed, it'll all come straight in a minute. Let's go quickly to the PA now and see whether David Coleman can tell us a little more about what may be an apparent discrepancy in figures. Over to Coleman. Well, as the gentleman said, there ain't no Coleman. David, we'll give it back to you.
Well, I was noticing on this very elaborate chart kept on my right by Graham Pyatt here that of the 22 seats we've had in, about an equal number have shown a swing to Labour and a swing to the Conservatives. We do look like having one of those very interesting elections from the point of view of those of us who study them, of seats and opinions moving both ways. But I'm afraid that opinions got to move pretty solidly in Labour's directions in the areas we haven't heard from for them to have a chance of pulling off a victory in this election.
These prognostications. However, they come from a very expert brain, I feel it my duty bound to say. We are watching little pictures all around the room to see what's happening next. Nothing is happening next. Not even Mackenzie looks as though he wants to say anything at all. Let's have a look at the state of the parties again. Are we back again on which board, I wonder? Here it is. This one.
Now we've got 24 results in, and still one change only, going in the Conservative direction. That in the unusual constituency, where there's a tremendous turnover of population, and of course the seat captured by the first television star to report tonight. There are about half a dozen or so to come later on. We'll have to see just whether that becomes a factor in politics and on that side of the fence as well. But the magic column on the right, net change. Remember, Labour must pick up 38 seats in the right-hand column in order to upseat the government. If it does not do that, then they have no chance of winning. Conservatives leading Labour by 3 in the 24 declared.
Well, there is a situation at 11:05 p.m.
Perhaps I might say how much I rejoice at the pattern of results we've had so far. We have broken away quite plainly from the uniformity shown in previous results. In previous results, 90% of seats have been within 1 or 2% of the national swing. Now I see over here a spread of 8%, from 4% swings to Labour, 4% swings to Conservatives on these results. And a very, very even spread along this continuum.
In other words, so far, the don't-knows are making up their minds in slightly different ways in different parts of the country. And this seems to me to be rather refreshing after the terribly uniform swings we've had in the past.
There are all signs that another result is not going to be very long delayed, gentlemen. There is a sort of general egg-laying going on all around the room, which means that something is happening. We'll be with you in just a moment when we know what it is. Butler, would you like to take a little... Sorry, Mr. Butler is busy on a very urgent calculation. Warwick and Leamington has appeared as a result. Here it is. The Conservatives have held Sir Anthony Eden's old seat at Warwick. The previous majority at the 1957 by-election was 2,200. The Conservative majority this time is 13,079.
A 4% swing to Labour compared, sorry, a 2% swing to Labour compared to 1955, but then, of course, Sir Anthony Eden was the candidate. It is, of course, a very considerable swing to the Conservatives compared to the by-election 3 years ago when Sir Anthony Eden resigned his seat. There was an increased turnout there, too.
This tends to confirm one's impression that those by-elections were very misleading a year or two ago, when there were massive abstentions on the Conservative side, and now, faced with the choice of government, they're moving back in considerable numbers to that side. Striking, too, I thought, the Conservative candidate at Warwick and Leamington actually got 3,000 more votes than Anthony Eden himself did at the last election.
One point I think we missed, Bob, was that the one seat that changed hands was the first television personality reported.
I caught that when you were working with Ella.
That was when you had your nose, you know, into that machine there. Butler, would you now like to free yourself and try the scoreboard, please?
Well, if the scoreboard will come up, I will talk about it. But I think probably there's another result in the hopper, and therefore we're not going to the scoreboard.
Here it is. It's London Southwark. Labour has held Southwark. The majority in 1955 was 17,230. The majority this time for Labour, 12,340. Another result follows hard on its tail.
6% swing to the Conservatives there.
Here is Kingston upon Thames.
Oh, once again, it's the imposing Portland entrance to the Civic Centre. And once more, a wonderful cheer for the Superintendent of Police, followed very smartly by Town Clerk, Sheriff Alderman Fremantle once again, and this time it's Southampton Itchen. A straight fight. Oh, last time the Labour majority of 5,000 odd.
Ladies and gentlemen, Southampton Itchen constituency. I, the undersigned, being the returning officer for the constituency above mentioned, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given on each candidate at the election was as follows. King Horace, 29,123. King Evelyn, 25,390.
That's what we call the Battle Royal, the Battle of the Kings.
Horace King elected.
That's a Labour victory. No change in Southampton Itchen. I return you to Richard Dimbleby in London.
Here's Rotherham. Also no change. Labour's in at Rotherham. The majority last time was 11,541. it's different by only 2 votes. That really is no change, isn't it?
But there's actually there's a slightly increased turnout, and therefore there is a slight swing to the Conservatives. That's the first seat we've had from Yorkshire. In Itchen, Southampton certainly split its votes. There was a swing to the Conservatives in the Conservative-held seat. There's a substantial swing to Labour in the Labour-held seat we just had reported from Itchen. There the swing was 5.5%, the biggest increase in Labour majority we've yet had. I believe there were some population changes there. It's always very difficult to calculate the exact effect of population changes, and they may have distorted the pattern. Nonetheless, there were 2 incumbent members, both getting substantially increased majorities. I think it might be interesting now, if it's possible, to go over and see what has been happening in the national picture swing. There, Bob Mackenzie explained earlier, it was necessary for a 2% swing evenly spread over the whole country for Labour to have a chance. Well, on 22 results, the swing to the Conservatives has been 0.9%. But it's much harder to predict this election than any previous one because the country has plainly been behaving in a much less uniform fashion. And I don't at the moment expect that pointer to stay in just that place all the night, as it would have on previous elections, stayed where it settled after the first 4 or 5 results.
What about state of parties, please, while we're at it?
Here, the magic column on the right still shows the Conservatives ahead with 1 gain, and the figure to keep in mind is the 38, which the Labour Party must gain in that column in order to upseat the government.
There's a result in Southgate, which Sir Beverly Baxter has held his seat.
Well, I want to do 3 things to let these people...
This is Evelyn King, the gallant loser. We've missed the first part. Dr. Horace King making his speech.
To the returning officer and officials.
Now here's the Chelsea result, which has just suddenly come in. The Conservatives have retained Chelsea, as one might expect, I think. Brentford and Chiswick. There's Mrs. Braddock. Just too late. Brentford and Chiswick, the 2 kings, which you saw Dr. King talking a moment ago, and we had to leave because there's another new one in at any moment. Now here it is, Derby North. Labour's in at Derby North. Previous majority 5,000, it's been halved, the majority, but Labour is back in the seat.
The first result from that part of the country...
Previous was 3,400 majority for Labour, turned into 170 majority for the Conservatives.
There was no Liberal this time, last time a 15%
I interrupt you to
Liberal
go
vote.
straight to Leeds as a result coming there.
We've got a result coming up now from Leeds West, where the sitting member is Mr. T.C. Pannell, Charlie Pannell, a Labour member. He had a majority of some 6,000 last time. The returning officer and the Lord Mayor, although it's a lady, you call her the Lord Mayor, are waiting for the candidates to come up at the moment. There seems to have been a slight hitch, but then there always is in these things, and I'm assured that, in fact, the result is out. There's Mr. Crouch is just about to approach the platform again. The Lord Mayor, you may know, has...
I declare the result for Leeds West constituency as follows. For Thomas Charles Pannell, 25,878 votes. For David Lange Crouch, 21,285. The majority is 4,593. And I declare to be elected Thomas Charles Pannell.
Labour victory, no change, majority slightly down. Back to Richard Dimbleby in London.
I'll give you another result from Manchester Ardwick, which Labour has held. This was the possible marginal seat. Labour's held the division, and we have another right on its tail, London Surbiton. The Conservatives have held Surbiton. Mr. Nigel Fisher used to work with Major Lloyd George. Conservatives slightly down, majority down. It was 12,000, it's 2,000 down. The Conservatives.
The dropped turnout, 2.5% swing to Labour.
Sorry, from Wigan. Labour has held Wigan, the oldest and most joked about borough in Lancashire. The majority last time was 16,000 and a bit, and this time 16,000, last time 17,000, a trifle down.
Swing to the Conservatives.
Almost next door is the result from Warrington, where Dr. Edith Summerskill, Labour, has been returned. Majority previously 5,600, so hers is down 600. And here is the lady, Dr. Summerskill.
Second
appears.
Lancashire swing to Labour, to the Conservatives.
And we have another from St Helens. St Helens, the glass-blowing town, where Labour has held the seat. The majority is 3,000 up. No, 2,000 up.
That's compared to the by-election. Compared to 55, a 2.5% swing to the Conservatives in St Helens. That's the biggest swing to the Conservatives we've yet had from Lancashire, which is supplying a very large proportion of the results at the moment.
The by-election here, of course, was when Sir Hartley Shawcross resigned, was it not? I think we might have a look at party total, shall we? We will. State of the parties. I ought to explain this time we really are taking the Press Association board. I misunderstood and thought we were before. This board is now probably ahead of us or right up with us.
Very important 3 Conservative gains now.
It's another one we should be hearing about soon.
So yes. There is now, I agree, a tide setting in, although it's an uneven one on the edges, slightly in the Conservative direction.
We may find David Coleman there to tell us how up-to-date they're keeping this board. Shall we see? Are you there, Coleman? He's not there. Never mind. We carry straight on.
On those results, there was a 0.9% swing to the Conservatives in the country as a whole. In Lancashire, however, on 7 results, only a 0.8% swing to Labour.
A new result from Newcastle upon Tyne Central. Labour is back. The majority is down by 2,500.
The first result from Tyneside, a 0.7% swing to the Conservatives.
A new one from Liverpool, Scotland. Labour's held Scotland, Liverpool. David Logan, 88 years old, the oldest member in Parliament. And the Labour majority is down by 2,500.
There, 3.1% swing to the Conservatives in the first Liverpool seat we've heard from.
This would give it, if it kept on now, something like a 70 or 80 Conservative majority in the House, but still there's a chance of some regional variation that would cut that down.
Old David Logan we were talking about was returned unopposed 30 years ago when he succeeded T.P. O'Connor. He's represented this division ever since. He was the oldest member in the last Parliament.
T.P. O'Connor was elected first there in 1885,
yes.
So things had 80 years and the same in 2 people's hands.
They don't change much at Liverpool, Scotland. Here's a new one coming in, a result from Leeds West.
That's a confirmation of what we had before, I think, showing a 1.8% swing to the Conservatives in the first Leeds result that we've heard. Slightly increased turnout in West Leeds, up 1%.
Yeah, you're quite right. It is confirmation. Not anything new, I'm sorry. State of the parties again, please, for a quick look.
Well, this is the same thing, I think, that we saw before. 3 seats have changed hands. We wait breathlessly to see what the 3rd seat that has changed hands. So far, of course, we have only heard from 2 seats that have changed hands.
Yes, you see, the state of the party board, as I said, is ahead of us. It's bound to be. But not all that far, as you will discover. Come on, where's that result we're looking for?
Conservative leads are now to be seen in the north and Midlands as well as in the south, and it's quite clear that the Labour improvement has been rather spotty in various parts of the country, and in some ways the increased Liberal vote is as striking as anything else. In some areas you've got the Liberals polling up to 30 or 40% of the Labour vote.
Let's just have a look at the party lead, shall we now? Different thing. Here we are.
On 52
David?
results, that's to say we're nearly a tenth of the way through. On 52 results, the Conservatives fall ahead. If they hadn't gained those 3 seats that we've heard about, they would, of course, be 2 seats behind Labour. So they definitely are pulling out ahead, but the situation is still highly fluid.
You're protecting yourself tonight, I see.
Well, I've got cause to, I must say. The pattern is defying all precedent, which is a very healthy thing.
Bob, how do you view things?
Well, I agree. There's a considerable variation of the kind we haven't had in recent elections, and I think we can understand why that might be so.
Sorry, there's a result coming from Manchester. To interrupt you, straight to Manchester, please.
And in Manchester, we're waiting for the result of Blakely. This is a 3-cornered fight.
Johnson on my right.
A 3-cornered fight here. E.S.T. Johnson, Conservative. Crimes, Labour, and R.M. Hammond,
Crimes on my left.
the Liberal. The Conservative majority of the last election was 5,436. We're waiting intensely here.
I, being the returning officer for the Blakely constituency of Manchester, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. Eric Seymour Thewlis Johnson,
Conservative,
22,163. Reginald Braithwaite Crimes,
Labour,
17,790. Robert Michael Hammond,
Liberal,
7,223. And I further declare that Eric Seymour Thewlis Johnson has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency.
There we are then. No change in Blakely, Manchester. The figures: Johnson, Conservative, 22,163. Crimes, Labour, 17,790. Hammond, Liberal, 7,223. And now back to Richard Dimbleby in London.
Where we find that Labour has held Stockton on tees. This is where Mr. George Chetwynd defeated Mr. Macmillan in 1945. Majority in 1955 was 3,815, so it's down by about 600. Another result is in from Bath in Somerset. Isaac Pittman, whose name you associate with shorthand, has been returned at Bath. Majority a little down, 300 down this time.
Slight swing to Labour, and I think almost the first seat we've had from the West Country since Exeter. Back in Stockton, the second seat we'd had from the North East, there was a swing to the Conservatives, 0.8% there, very slightly increased turnout in Stockton, where they returned Mr. Chetwynd.
And looking back for a moment at Manchester Blakely, it was interesting the Liberals, who hadn't stood at all last time, picked up 7,000 votes, or about 40%, as large a vote as the Labour Party.
They actually got 15.3% of the total vote, and of course saved their deposit. I think there's only been one lost Liberal deposit this time, despite the much larger number of candidatures, a large number of seats they're fighting for the first time.
Incidentally, David, where do deposits go when they're lost? Just put that straight.
I believe they go straight into the Consolidated Fund.
I should have asked Bob, shouldn't I? Where do they go, Bob?
I think that's right.
Into what fund?
The Consolidated Fund of the National Revenue. They don't go into any special reservoir to help disabled candidates.
I knew someone last week who thought that the losing candidates had to pay their money to the one who won. However, let us make it clear is not so. It goes into a fund.
Bath was another seat where the Liberals polled, relatively speaking, very well. They got 13% of the vote. This is much more than they've been getting in past elections in that sort of place.
I think we might take a trip out of town now to give ourselves a rest. The news has been getting pretty hot and pretty fast, and it's got the newspapers on their toes as well as television. Let us go now into the press room of the Birmingham Post, where they're just about ready to get cracking with the first edition. Over to the Birmingham Post.
Well, Birmingham as a city still waits for its results. I'm told the streets are crowded, particularly all around in the suburbs. There are 13 constituencies, but we probably won't hear from one of them until around midnight, something under half an hour from now. But it isn't only television people who work throughout an election result time like this. The presses have just started to run here with the first edition of the Birmingham Post. All the big papers will be pushing out a first edition around now early because people like to read about it just as much as they, even if they already know the result. The poll here in Birmingham, according to all reports, has been very heavy. Labour say over 85% at some stations. The Liberals say that they were out very early, pulling all the promise of their canvass, but we shan't know for a time. Now here's a first copy of the press of the first edition of the Birmingham Post. First results favour the government, says the front headline. Of course, there'll be more and more editions as the night wears on. There it is for you to see for yourself. And with that, we can go back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Well, we've just been having a quick look at the front page of the Birmingham Post, and I think my pundits all agree that it's correct, don't they?
I would agree
quite sure
now.
that it's correct.
Yes, there's no doubt about
it. If I look at the results, the only confidence for Labour on the results so far this evening has come from Lancashire. There were only about two other swings, except for those from Lancashire, that have favoured Labour. In every other part of the country, they have gone to the Conservatives. The swing has been in the Conservatives' favour. I'm going right out on a limb. The Conservatives are going to win this election.
Well, now it's safe, I agree. The Liberals, I would add, however, have made quite startling gains, and we're not ordinarily taking them into account in talking about our swing. It is significant the way they're getting up to 30 or 40% of the Labour vote, and that is their aim, after all, to
I'm
replace
stopping
the
you
Labour
quickly
Party.
for Southport, Bob, sorry.
Yes,
the
indeed.
Conservatives are in again for Southport. Wonder how Lord Street's feeling. Majority last time was 17,400. It's now 15,000 2,500, down by 2,900.
This is another sensational result from the point of view of the Liberals. The Liberals ousted Labour from second place, although they didn't fight last time. The intervening Liberals, Mr. Byers, are intervening to some purpose there.
And they never had anything like that the last time they did stand in 1952, where they had 3,000 votes. They're now up to 12,000.
Another result is on the way. Here it is. Dr. Charles Hill is in at Luton. The majority is up. It was 4,400 from last time. It's this time, as you see, just over 5,000. Here is Dr. Charles Hill, a familiar face and a very deep and well-known voice on the radio.
The first thing we've had from that part of the country, and 0.5% swing to the Conservatives. One more area where the swing seems definitely in favour of the government.
May I say, there, of course, the Conservative minister back. Dr. Hill is the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Another result is into the London area. In Bermondsey, Labour has retained the seat. Yes, previous majority is 17,000. The majority is down by 3,000. This is Mr. Mellish, a very popular Member of Parliament, who is known as the Dockers MP. He's back safely there.
But a 4% swing to the Conservatives in Bermondsey and a slightly higher turnout than last time.
Manchester Blackley.
That's a confirmation.
It is a confirmation, I'm sorry. I have to be corrected. Has held Blakely, not Blackley. There are the figures if you wish to see them. A result, Newcastle-on-Tyne North. The Conservative is in. Their majority is very nearly doubled. It was 6,452 at the 57 by-election.
But compared to 1955, there is just a swing of 1.1% to the Conservatives there. It was Major Gwilym Lloyd George's seat before he had a peerage when he left the Home Secretaryship.
Newcastle-upon-Tyne, Northumberland, the great shipping town, the port, and the exporter of coal. Must get my geographical facts in sometime. There isn't much time at the moment, is there? Here's another one coming up from a town I know very well. It's Winchester. A Conservative is in again at Winchester, which used to be the capital of England, Mr. Smithers. The majority up by about 1,500.
And from this safe seat with some rural areas, there's a 1.8% swing to the Conservatives. I think it's the first seat we've had from the Hampshire County constituency.
And
there is the swing that way.
To Liverpool-Kirkdale. Conservatives have held Kirkdale, which was a marginal seat with a possible change. Mr. Pannell is here. The Labour majority, I beg your pardon, Conservative majority was 1,800 before. It's been substantially increased. Here is Watford. Conservatives have held Watford, another possible marginal seat, and they have increased their majority from 1,700 to 2,900.
The Liberals have doubled their vote in 1951, the last time they stood.
They just saved their deposit with just over 1/8 of the total vote. There was a swing to the Conservatives in Watford, 1.2%.
Well, you've now had a couple of marginals running.
A couple of marginals running, the sort of things that Labour should have been picking up if it was to make any headroads in this election.
Here we come, a new result from Bury and Radcliffe in Lancashire. The Conservatives have held this marginal seat. Majority last time 3,700. They've put it up by nearly 100.5.
It's a marginal seat, but there's never
Here is another,
Labour.
sorry, Liverpool-Toxteth. Conservatives have held Toxteth. Majority is down. This is Mr. Bevins, Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, who's back safely at Toxteth.
Very slight swing to Labour in Toxteth. It's the second Liverpool result. The first one showed a swing to the Conservatives.
We'd better start having a look at our totals again, I think, haven't we, after this? Has there been some sort of a change?
Should we get,
I think probably that we could look at the total votes, which must have piled up quite a lot in the last few minutes. And we probably can, yes, there you see Ella rushing up to date, and with the Conservatives now with a slightly smaller proportion of the vote, although this just is the chance of the seats that have been coming in. We've got 3 million votes in now, the Conservatives with 51% of them.
Let's have a look at the party lead now, as well as the total vote, shall we? Party lead.
The Conservatives are 7 seats ahead
I'm
of
stopping
Labour.
you. For Manchester, there's a result, I think. Over to Manchester, please.
And here in Manchester, we're waiting for the final result from Gorton. And this is a seat contested by Connie Ziliakis, Labour, and Donald Moore, the Conservative candidate. Now, this is a very marginal seat. At the last election, the Labour majority for...
I'm giving you a result quickly from Eccles before we go back to Manchester. Labour's held the marginal seat at Eccles and has dropped the majority slightly. It was
Slight swing to the
2,300
Conservatives.
before.
0.4% to the Conservatives there in Eccles.
Back again to Manchester. Here we are.
As you were saying, the majority last time for Labour here in the Gorton constituency was just 269, which is pretty close. Just how it's going to go this time, I can't really tell you. Everybody's keeping their fingers very tightly crossed. I think that is the Conservative candidate. You can see him just slightly down the left, the statue of Edward VII there. Is on crutches. He was in the Navy during the war and lost his leg in HMS Dorsetshire when she was dive-bombed by these Japanese suicide bombers. He's a holder of the King's Medal, and he's a headmaster of a mixed secondary technical school. And there on the right is his opponent, Connie Ziliakis. He was very well known up in the northeast. He was MP for Gateshead from 1945 to 1950. Man of many.
I'm interrupting for London Bethnal Green. Labour has held Bethnal Green. The majority is down from 20,000 to 16,800, as you see. Another result is in from Acton. In Acton, which is a marginal, the Conservatives have won the seat from Labour. The majority, this time, 920 is against Labour's 525.
That's that third Conservative gain we were looking for. 2% swing to the Conservatives in Acton, where housing changes, I believe, helped the Conservatives.
Before we go back to Manchester, perhaps here is Thurrock. Labour's held Thurrock. 15,300 last time, down to 12,000 this time.
Big swing to the Conservatives there, nearly 5%, 4.6% to the Conservatives in Thurrock.
Better go back to Manchester, have we not? I think things are happening.
Well, if that swing that you mentioned there is echoed here in Gorton, this may well be another gain for Conservatives, but it's too early to say. It's really anybody's guess. Connie Ziliakis moving around just by the door there.
I'm interrupting again to give you the fact that Mr. Ernest Marples, Postmaster General, is back in Wallasey.
Exactly the same proportions as last time.
Yes, and here is Ernie Marples, as everybody calls him, the active Postmaster General. There's the result from Wallasey. Here's East Ham North, which Labour has held. Majority from 3,800 up, down from 5,900. They've dropped a couple of thousand.
2.3 to the Conservatives.
Back to Manchester.
Well, if Richard Dimbleby does this to me again, I shall have hiccups. Anyway, here we are back for a third time, I think, with Gorton still waiting for the Lord Mayor to come in and tell us the result in this very marginal seat. Just recapping, the Labour majority at the last election, when Ziliakis' opponent was Campbell, the Conservative, was only 269. Ziliakis is on the right of your picture there, with the rosette in his buttonhole, man brushing his hair back in front of him. A man of very wide experience. He was educated in Sweden, England, and Yale University. Very well known as a writer.
Wheeler and Manchester must have hiccups now, because here's East Ham South. Labour has held the seat. The majority is down by about 1,500 or more, 1,800.
2.5% swing to the Conservatives in East Ham South.
Here's Manchester Wythenshawe. Before we go back to the other Manchester, there's no change there. The Conservatives have held it. It's a marginal seat. They might have lost, but they haven't done. Majority down from 2,800 to 1,300.
1.7% swing to Labour in Wythenshawe, where housing helped them.
Back to Wheeler and City Hall.
Well, here we are back in Gorton. This isn't a candidate. As a matter of fact, that was...
Ladies and gentlemen, the Lord Mayor.
The Lord Mayor enters. Harold Quinney. And now for this very exciting and very close result we anticipate. Last word with the candidates. We should have the result any moment for Manchester, Gorton.
I, being the returning officer for the Gorton constituency of Manchester, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. Connie Ziliakis,
Labour,
23,337. Henry Donald Moore, 22,480. And I further declare that Connie Ziliakis has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency. Will you be seated?
So there we are. That is, after all, held by Labour. The figures: Connie Ziliakis for Labour, 23,337, more Conservative 22,480. With that result, Manchester Gordon back to Richard Dimbleby.
The result: Liverpool-Garston. Conservatives are held Liverpool-Garston. Here's another one following behind, which is Northampton. Labour has held Northampton, a marginal seat which they might have lost. Let's have a quick look at the state of the parties. There's a change there which reflects the victory of Mr. Jeremy Thorpe, the Liberal in North Devon. Not yet come in, but that's true.
That is indeed.
This, of course, is a very striking situation indeed. Both the Conservatives have gained 2, the Liberals have gained 1, Jeremy Thorpe at North Devon. The result now can only be called pretty disastrous for the Labour Party. The Conservatives are back, I think, almost certainly, and the swing that has gone against the Conservatives in some places has tended to go to the Liberals and not to Labour.
The average swing of 1% would leave a Conservative majority of 100 over Labour, almost exactly.
The Conservatives have done the impossible and won 3 elections in a row.
A result: Stockport North. The Conservatives have held the marginal seat of Stockport North, or possibly marginal. Sir Norman Hulbert is back. The majority is down by about 1,000 and a bit.
A 1.7% swing to Labour.
On its tail comes Merton and Morton, which the Conservatives have held the previous majority 6,300, now 8,000, an increase. That brings us almost to date, but here is our Liberal result from Devon North, which will be with you in a moment, and here it is. The Liberals have won North Devon from the Conservatives.
How long ago is it since the Liberals won a seat at a general election? A fresh new gain, quite a while.
It is indeed. Since 1950 was the last time, I think.
Yes, I must interrupt you. Here's Eton and Slough. Fenner Brockway has been defeated. No. I'm sorry, I have the wrong card.
No, he's back in with a very much reduced majority. Brockway's back in with a very much reduced majority.
There must have been a recount there. It's the smallest majority by far that we've yet had.
There has been a recount, I understand, and Brockway, the long-standing, very energetic Labour MP, a great expert in colonial affairs, has come back with a very much reduced majority.
3% swing to the Conservatives in Eton and Slough, not quite enough.
I'll redeem myself with Stockport South. Stockport South, the Conservatives have retained. There's a possible marginal here. The majority was 4,100 last time. It's dropped to 2.5.
2.2% to the
Here's
Labour
another
Party.
One in London, Shoreditch and Finsbury. Labour has held Shoreditch and Finsbury. The majority this time has increased from 6,900 at the 1958 by-election to the present figure that you see on the screen.
Very low poll in that by-election, of course, obviously accounts for the fact that the majority has gone up so sharply.
There's another one in Bolton West. The Liberals have held Bolton West, which might have been a marginal, in fact was. Majority, Liberal majority, has gone from 4,800 down to 3,988.
Another of these cotton towns, but now the scoreboard's going to look more interesting when we next go back to it, because there'll be 2 Liberals in it. And we'll have a different sort of picture, not just this ding-dong fight between the 2 major parties.
We've got our first Scottish result coming shortly, gentlemen, but don't let that interrupt us. Do we want to look at states of parties at the moment, do you think?
If we can go.
No, over to Cliff Mitchellmore has a guest, I think, in the studio.
Well, just about an hour ago, the first Conservative game was announced from Holborn and St Pancras, where Mrs. Lena Jager, the sitting Labour member, was beaten by somebody that I know very well indeed, and you know very well indeed too. A Conservative gain, but as an MP, Geoffrey, or Geoffrey Johnson-Smith, he is, of course, a tonight loss. Now, both the commentators here emphasised that you were a television personality. How much did this play a part, do you think?
I don't think it helped very much at all. Mrs. Jager was well known, as any MP is well known in the constituency. It helped me in this way, that I was as well known as she was, so I didn't need the build-up that someone invariably needs when he's contesting a seat against a sitting member.
Come on, Bootle, yeah. Bootle. I'm having to interrupt for a moment because here's the Bootle result. Labour has held the marginal seat of Bootle. Majority was 1,440, and it's up fairly substantially there. Following on its tail, here's Baronscourt.
Really highlight result, another Conservative game.
Where the Conservatives have captured Baronscourt from Labour and have knocked out a Labour majority and produced a Conservative one of 900. On its tail comes a result from Hornsey. Lady Gammons is in for Hornsey, widow of the former Assistant Postmaster General. There's no change here. Conservatives have held the seat. Back to Cliff Mitchellmore with our apologies.
It didn't help you at all?
No, not entirely in this respect. I mean, it did help me. because I was known. And therefore, you know, when you're contesting a seat against someone who is a sitting member, well, the sitting member always had that advantage. But in this case, she didn't. But this is what happened. I would go to people and say, you're Geoffrey Johnson Smith on BBC Television Tonight. I always vote Conservative, and I'd vote for you whoever you were, because I always vote Conservative. Then I have some people who say to me and say, oh, you're from Tonight. Well, I like you all right, and I like your programme, and I hope you get back to it soon. I'm voting Labour.
Now, how vigorous a campaign was it? Some of us had great fears for your safety down there, because it is a very vigorous constituency, isn't
Very
it?
vigorous indeed, and that's putting it mildly. There was some degree of bitterness, because we had a Conservative borough council was elected only a few months ago that introduced a very controversial rent rebate scheme, a differential rent scheme for council houses and council tenants. And this, of course, resulted in people protesting about it. We had parades up and down the place. We had 3,000 people who marched in Tory's central office headquarters. And councillors were chased into the subways and that sort of thing. And this made it extra tough and far more difficult, I think, as a campaign if we hadn't had that issue brought into it.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Geoffrey. I'm sorry that we're losing you.
Well, I'll miss tonight, too. Thank you, Cliff.
No. I'm interrupting again with apologies. Here's Manchester Gorton. It's really only confirmation, is it not? I don't know why we stopped for that. The result we really want is Oxford. The Conservatives have held Oxford. The Honourable Christopher Woodhouse, Monty Woodhouse, head of the Institute of International Affairs, is back. Majority is up a little on the previous one of 7,700. Here is Dewsbury. Labour is in at Dewsbury. The majority is halved. It was 7,400 last time. On its tail comes another one from the south of
The
England.
Liberals getting 7,000 there, too.
From the beloved New Forest. The Conservatives have held the New Forest. Colonel Crossthwaite Eyre is back. The majority is a little up by 2,000 on what it was last time. Here comes on its tail Darwin in Lancashire. We're popping around the country. The Conservatives have held Darwin. Charles Fletcher Cook is back. The majority is up by about 400.
Slight swing to them, 0.2%.
Thank you. And here on its tail comes yet another. This is Leicester North East. Labour has held Leicester North East, the town of 1,000 trades. The majority, 1,400 this time, 5,170 last time.
4.5% swing to the Conservatives there.
Here comes our first Scottish result from Dunfermline Town, the blood red wine. This is the boroughs, in fact, Dunfermline. Labour is back. Majority 8,700, which is 600 or 700 up on last time.
0.3% swing to the Conservatives, to Labour in the first Scottish result.
Here's the second Scottish result. Kilmarnock. Labour's held Kilmarnock, one of the very heavy industrial areas of Scotland. This majority 10,000 as opposed to 8,000 last time.
1.8% swing to Labour in the second Scottish result.
Ipswich in the eastern counties, where it's been held by Labour in the shape of Mr. Dinglefoot. This is a marginal seat which Labour might have lost. The majority, 3,200. Last time was 7,007 to come
Very
down.
striking Liberal vote there,
Here's
too.
Leicester South East. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Bob. Leicester South East, where the Conservative is in. This is Mr. Peel. The majority is up from 6,400 to 14,600. Here's Leeds on its
7% swing
a
there.
result due in Leeds over there straight away from London.
Well, very soon I think we're going to have the result from Leeds South, which, of course, is Mr. Hugh Gaitskell's seat. There's no actual intense sign of activity at the moment, but I think it's coming up. His opponents here have been a young man, Mr. John Addy, the Conservative, who was rather bitter at the beginning of the election because he said Mr. Gaitskell was never in the constituency. But Mr. Gaitskell's rather made up for that lately. Anyway, he was busy at the time, I think one can say. There's also a Liberal...
I'm interrupting for a moment from the north to take Crewe. Labour have held the seat at Crewe, the majority from 6,300 down to 3,700.
3.4% swing to Labour.
On its tail comes Manchester Openshaw, which Labour has also held. Majority 8,000 up to 8,400. On its tail comes Liverpool Edge Hill, which Labour has held. Here's a marginal seat. Labour's held it. The majority down from 1,120 to 699 back to Leeds.
Well, yes, we've definitely got Leeds South coming up. The returning officer is just talking to Mr. Gaitskell down there. You can see Mr. Gaitskell with his hand on the rail. And behind him is Mr. Addy, behind Mr. Gaitskell. Mr. Brian Meeks, the Liberal candidate, is also there, just in front of the poster. Mr. Brian Meeks has been polled, I think, standing here. It's the only Liberal in Leeds. There's a crowd waiting outside, I believe, of some proportions. Yes, there are. and doubtless they'll be receiving the report with some enthusiasm.
Interruptions for a moment. Interruptions, because here's London, Paddington South. The Conservatives have held it. The majority from 7,000, just up 7,287. Also waiting is a result from Smethwick. Patrick Gordon Walker for Labour has been returned for Smethwick. He's a member of the Shadow Cabinet. Here he is, just to have a quick look. No, he is
the Conservative
coming up now.
The Leeds South constituency as follows. For Hugh Todd Naylor Gateskill,
Labour,
24,442. For John Francis William Addy, 12,956. For John Brian Meeks,
Liberal,
4,340. And I declare to be elected Hugh Todd Naylor Gateskill.
Well, those are the cheers for Hugh Gateskill, elected again for Leeds South, and back to Richard Dimbleby in London.
If a quick calculation is right, Mr. Gaitskill's majority is down by just a little, about
1.5% swing against Mr. Gateskill, about the same as against the whole of his party in this election.
As I was trying to say, down by 900. Brighton Pavilion. The Conservatives held the Pavilion division of Brighton. Majority from 15,000 down slightly to 14. We're going to Burnley in Sound for a result there.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the result of the voting in the constituency Glasgow Kelvin Grove. Mr. Lilly, 12,355.
He's the Conservative.
Mrs. McAllister, 11,254.
Labour.
Mr. Park, 740.
ILP.
And I declare that Mr. Lilly has been duly elected to serve in Parliament as a member for the constituency Glasgow Kelvin Grove.
A Conservative gain on a 71% approximate poll, up about 10% from the by-election in 1958. And now back to Richard Dimbleby in the studio.
Sorry I tried to send you to Scotland instead of that, but I couldn't help it. Never mind. We've another result. Glasgow Mary Hill is here. Glasgow Mary Hill. Glasgow Mary Hill. Sorry, all confused. Labour's in there. The majority from 9,500 up from 8,600.
Labour making certain Scottish gains, though they lost that seat at Kelvin Grove, which is very important, the seat before this one.
We are going to Leeds, it appears, for information. It's probably Mr. Gaitskill's speech. Let's go straight back to Leeds.
I declare the result for Leeds South constituency as follows. For Hugh Todd Naylor Gateskill, 24,442. For John Francis William Addy, 12,956. For John Brian Meeks, 4,340. And I declare to be elected Hugh Todd Naylor
I'd like to express to the electors of South Leeds, my great appreciation of the fact that again in 1959 they have chosen me to be their Member of Parliament. And I would like to say that whatever may be the national result of this election will not make the slightest difference to my desire and intention to serve them as their Member of Parliament. I shall hope to look after their interests, regardless of politics, in the coming years, as I have endeavored to do in the past. I should also like to take the opportunity of expressing my special thanks to all those supporters of our party who have worked so hard in this election. I have a special reason for that, because I happened, unfortunately, not to be in the constituency for very long during the election. But nevertheless, or perhaps because of my absence, they worked even better than usual. And I much appreciate it. And I would like to say...
We are leaving Mr. Gates' speech for a moment. Here is Ruislip Northwood, where the Conservative is in. The majority has gone up from 11,555 last time. The second results in Albans. The Conservatives have held Verulamium, the Roman town. Mr. Victor Goodhue is in. The majority has gone from 5,700 up to 8,500. In Glasgow, Springburn, Labour has held Springburn. The Labour has held Springburn. The majority, 6,100, is an increase on 5,773 last time.
1% to Labour swing.
Communist candidate, 1,235. He's lost some money. Liverpool, West Derby. The Conservatives have held this marginal seat of West Derby, Liverpool. Previous majority there was 2,600. They've upped it to 3,000, well, to 3,333. Liverpool, Wavertree. Liverpool, Wavertree. Conservatives have held Wavertree. Their majority there has also gone up, but is slightly by about 600. In London again, we come back for Harrow East, where Harrow East has, Harrow East has been held by the Conservatives. It was a marginal seat. The majority from 5,900, it was before only 2,200.
3% swing to the Conservatives in Harrow East compared to 55.
Here is Romford in Essex. Labour's back for Romford, itself a marginal seat. The Conservatives have not gained from them. The Labour majority from 2,600 has gone down to 607, Labour and Co-op majority. Here is Brighton Kemp Town. That the Conservatives have held the Kemp Town division of Brighton. A very adventurous candidate, Mr. James. The majority, 5,200 before. It's up by 5. Here is Sevenoaks. The Conservatives are in again at Sevenoaks. The majority there has gone up a couple of thousand. This is a junior Conservative minister back, Mr. Rogers.
4% swing to the Conservatives. Liberals doing well there.
The Conservatives have also held Bolton East, a marginal seat. Previous majority is 3,500. There you are.
1% swing to Labour in that cotton town.
And in London, Hampstead, the Conservatives, Mr. Henry Brooks, been returned for Hampstead. Majority, 12,006, 100 less than last time. There's Mr. Brooke, the Minister of Housing, Local Government and for Welsh Affairs.
Very big Liberal vote, more than half the Labour vote and a third of the Conservative vote.
Here's confirmation of Leeds South. Mr. Gateskill, Leader of the Opposition, no change. Here is Mr. Gateskill, who you heard speaking just a moment ago. His majority, 11,400 last time, this time, as opposed to 12,000.
Though his party is almost certainly defeated, so there is personal drama in his appearance recently, accepting his victory, personal victory, but the party is defeated.
A result from Wakefield, where Arthur Creech-Jones for Labour is in Wakefield in the West Riding. Labour spokesman on colonial questions, former Labour Secretary of State for the Colonies. Majority swing. About the same.
To Labour.
A result now from Leicester South West. Labour's Chief Whip, Mr. Herbert Boughton, is back for Leicester South West. Majority, instead of 4,400 last time, down to 2,007.
2% to the Conservatives in Leicester South West. Turnout up there, as in so many other seats we've been hearing from tonight.
Bob, you'd like to repeat the point you were making about Mr. Gateskill?
Well, I was just saying there is an element of personal drama in Mr. Gateskill's position. He's been returned himself, but his party now has almost certainly been defeated. And this is a remarkably serious problem for them, the third loss in a row. It's not happened before in modern British politics.
Thank you. David, there's a result coming from Glasgow, I think in sound only. That is highest to Scotland.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the result of the voting in the constituency Glasgow Wood side. Mr. William Grant, 16,567.
Conservative.
Mr. John McGinley, 14,483. Mr.
Labour.
George McLaughlin, 2,583. And I
Liberal.
declare Mr. William Grant has been duly elected to serve in Parliament as a member for the constituency of Glasgow Wood side.
No check.
I've just heard, by the way, Sir Winston Churchill is back at Woodford. That's just a tidbit. There's one more result waiting, but we apparently want the state of the parties first. Go to them quickly, shall we? Here they are, men.
Conservatives up 4 seats on 115 results. Labour down 5. The Liberals have gained 1 seat from the Conservatives.
Now, overwhelmingly certain, I would say, that the Conservatives have won the election, and it's a matter now of seeing what kind of majority, increased majority almost certainly, they'll have.
Result for Batley and Morley in the West Riding. Labour's held Batley and Morley. Batley and Morley, 7,666 this time, which is 2,000 or a little less, 1,600 less than in 1965.
2% swing to the Conservatives.
That's a heavy woolen textile town. Geographical colour. Short pause for breath. We've done our totals. No more messages. Any situation changes in general? David, have you got something to say?
Well, I'm waiting in a little while. I'll give you the overall swing figure.
All right, take a rest. Bob's dying to say something.
Well, I think it's time just to note that the remarkable fact is that the Liberals have strengthened their position while Labour's position has weakened. And this is part of the thing they've been trying to do.
Sorry
Joe
to stop
Grimmon's
you.
aim.
Here is the Woodford result I gave you very quickly just now. Sir Winston Churchill is back again for Woodford, and this means that he becomes the only thing he never has been, the father of the House of Commons.
There was, in fact, a slight swing to Labour in Woodford, but still an overwhelming Conservative majority.
Sir Winston's
20th fight.
21st.
21st.
Challenger. There's another result following up behind after this result, who sat in the House continuously since 1900. Here is Pudsey, perhaps I ought to say. The Conservatives have held the marginal seat of Pudsey, where Len Hutton and Sutcliffe were born, in the West Riding. The majority, 6,500, now is 2,000 up on the previous Conservative majority.
Big Liberal vote there.
We're going to Leeds for informational speeches. No, we're going to our studio in Leeds to join Robert Key for an interview.
No actual gains yet. No actual gains yet.
In Scotland, no actual gains, but there's been a swing towards Labour in Scotland and Lancashire. First of all, though, may I congratulate you very much on your own election here.
Thank you very much.
Not that there's any doubt, but congratulations all the same. I think you must admit by now that the election is going against Labour. Our computer reckons that about 100 Conservative majority is likely. Why do you think that's happened?
This is what you're going to ask me.
I'm asking you now, because we're actually talking now.
Oh, I see. Well, I haven't had time, I'm afraid, to study your computer. I've only heard about 3 or 4 results which have gone badly for us. And, of course, one's bound to admit that it is disappointing, particularly, it seems, in the south of England. On the other hand, I'm certainly not going to make any final comment just yet.
No, don't blame you. But perhaps you could comment just on 2 points. You've done well in Lancashire and Scotland,
yes,
where there's been hardship. Does this mean the Labour Party can only do well in conditions of hardship, that it has no real positive policy?
I think it's much too premature to start analysing the causes of election changes which themselves are not yet completed.
Yes.
And I've no doubt that when they're completed, whatever they may be, there'll be a lot of investigation, inquiry, and talking, discussion, and so on about it. But I really don't think that on the basis of what has happened so far, computer or no computer, we've got to that stage, you know. And as you said yourself, we've done very well in the north of England, which I rather expected, I may say.
Of course, you've also not done so well as against the Liberal vote this time. Do you feel you could comment on that in any way?
Well, there again, honestly, the number of results. You see, you've been sitting here, no doubt, watching results. I've been watching the counting of my own votes.
Most unfair. You've been working very, very hard. And thank you very much.
But I'm very happy with my own result, anyhow.
Thank you very much indeed for coming along.
That's all right.
A quick look at the state of the parties, please.
No changes since last time. We're now just up on over 120 seats, 124 seats, a third of the way through the night's results.
We have a London result waiting, I think. Yes, here it is, London Streatham. Mr. Duncan Sands is in at Streatham. Majority was 12,268. It's up by about 500. Mr. Duncan's hands, here he is, son-in-law of Sir Winston Churchill. Conservative majority 2,210.
That was the gain I was speaking of.
On
so
its
it's a
tail
3.2% swing to
is
the
Leighton.
Conservatives.
Labour is in at Leighton. Labour majority 3,900. Previously 8,200. There's a result coming up from Birmingham. Labour has held the Aston division of Birmingham. Julius Silverman, well-known member too, has held the seat. Majority from 8,200 last time down to 2,005. Another result, Southall. Labour's back for Southall in the shape of Mr. George Pargeter. Majority from 6,300 down to 2,300.
4% swing to the
Here
Conservatives.
is Weston-super-Mare, which the Conservatives have held. Their majority at the by-election, 9,900, has gone up to 16,900.
Liberals very close behind Labour there.
Here is Widnes in Lancashire, which has been held, a marginal seat which Labour have held. The majority has actually gone up about 150.
Yes. Fractional swing to Labour in Widnes. Very high turnout there.
That, I think, brings us to date for this very second. We shall have to do some recapitulating soon, gentlemen. These things are happening fast. It now being about midnight, we are, of course, well and truly in the rush hour. I thought we were being called for some
The tide is
we're
setting
not.
in very clearly now. The Conservatives are increasing their majorities most places except for a few spots in the country, and in other parts of the country the striking fact is the Liberals have made a very impressive gain in popular support and actually picked up one new seat so far. It's going clearly, I think, to result in an increased Conservative majority in the House.
There's a new result just coming in. Here it is. It is Aylesbury. Sir Spencer Summers, Conservative, has been returned for Aylesbury, and the majority has risen from 5,700 up to 8,900. Labour's held Paddington North.
That's the result from Leeds Northwest, where the Conservative, Mr. Donald Cabry, has been re-elected. I must say it would be very surprising if he hadn't been. There's never been a Labour representative for his constituency, and he got the most whacking majority of all the constituencies here. So,
we now go to the Halifax result. The Conservatives have held the marginal seat of Halifax. Another result from Blackburn. Barbara Castle, Labour, is in for Blackburn, which is the marginal seat. She is the chairman of the Labour Party. The majority was 489 last time and is up to 2,866. We go back to Leeds.
For Donald Cabry, 35,210. For Dennis Burrell Matthews, 18,508. Majority, 16,702. And I declare to be elected Donald Cabry.
That result from Leeds, we go straight to this result, West Houghton in Lancashire, which Labour has held. The majority very close to what it was before, actually about 700 up or thereabouts.
It's worth noting that Barbara Castle, we had her result from Blackburn a moment or two ago, had a 2.5% swing to her. That was the sort of swing Labour needed to win. But the rest of the country didn't give Labour candidates as much as the chairman of the party.
Marginal seat of Rochester and Chatham. Arthur Bottomley, Labour, has lost his seat at Rochester and Chatham to the Conservatives.
Very startling result because he's a former Labour minister and a very popular local constituency member. And, of course, the area has had some economic trouble as well. The Bottomley result is most surprising.
He is a member of the, or was a member of the Labour Shadow Cabinet and spokesman on colonial and naval affairs. Let's have a look at the state of the party, please.
I think we're back where we were, still 145 results in and 8 changes against Labour, 7 Conservative gains. They've, of course, lost 1 seat to the Liberals, North Devon. We're still getting up more up to date now. The Conservatives have got some more seats in, but I don't think any of them involve changes of hands between 2 parties.
The total votes board might be to say, this is the party leads. The Conservatives still holding a lead over Labour, which at this time of the evening is a little surprising. Normally, with the urban areas counting first, Labour is ahead at this stage.
This clearly points to the Conservatives being in with an appreciably increased majority, unless the rural areas are behaving in a very different way from before. There's no indication of that in the results so far.
Flash, by the way, that Ian McCardo is defeated, and he is, of course, the member of Reading and the vice chairman of the Labour Party.
Well, here's the result. We'll snap it up on the screen since you've given it already. Let's have Reading. Ian McCardo, Labour, has been defeated at Reading. The marginal seat has gone to the Conservatives. Mr. Peter Emery becomes the member. Here is Mr. McCardo, who is vice chairman of the Labour Party's National Executive Committee and, of course, a very well-known politician.
A very big swing there, 4% swing to the Labour Party, to the Conservative Party in Reading.
Having some surprise. A result from Birkenhead. Labour's held the marginal seat of Birkenhead. Its majority slightly up on the last majority in 55 of 3,200. This is Mr. Collick, a former Labour junior minister.
Reasonably confident of winning if there was a high poll. There was a high poll, and he's been defeated. Clearly, this is a body blow to the Labour Party, and especially to the left of the party, for which he was a well-known spokesman.
The majority, 886. The previous Labour majority was 3,211. Another result from Stretford. No change in Stretford, Lancashire. Conservatives have held the seat. The previous majority was 11,000. It's down by nearly 2. Another result from Bebbington. The Conservatives have held Bebbington. The Conservatives are in again at Farnham. The majority is roughly 2,500 up for Sir Godfrey Nicholson, who sat for Farnham since 1937. Here is Southend East. The Conservatives have retained Southend East in the person of Mr. Stephen McCadden, and here he is, Grand Prior of the Primrose League. He also is known to viewers. The majority is up by about 1,000. The pier was on fire 2 days ago. Doesn't seem to have upset anybody. Sorry, I'm caught poised waiting for a result which hasn't come. Any extra comments, gentlemen? You may have half a minute. David?
There's a headline result coming that Labour has picked up a seat at Oldham East, but that'll come along in details in a moment. But the first Labour gain is on its way.
Meanwhile, there's a London one from London St Marylebone, which the Conservatives have held. Sir Wabel Wakefield, government whip and former rugby player, his majority about 500 or so down, 700 or so down on last time. Oldham East is in. Sir Ian Horrobin is out at Oldham East. Conservatives have taken the seat from Labour with a majority, which was last time. No, I'm sorry, what am I saying?
2.5% to Labour.
Labour has taken it from Conservative, I beg your pardon. Wrong way round.
The last election, there was exactly one such shift against the tide. We've got one against the tide so far this time also.
Sorry, my tongue fell over itself. I made Sir Ian Horrobin Labour instead of Conservative. Here is Glasgow Central. Rugby. The Conservatives have captured Rugby from Labour. The previous Labour majority was 1,400, where Tom Brown spent his school days. Mr. Alfred Wise now becomes the candidate. The majority you see for yourselves.
He was defeated in 1945. He's come back after a long time.
London Fulham, Labour is in again. When we have a chance, let's have a look at it, and David, no doubt, will talk about it.